The academy gates were never quiet. New cadets poured in from 100 worlds, their voices carrying pride, rivalry, and nervous laughter. The scanners hummed at the entrance, flashing green one after another as recruits stepped through. Species cleared. Proceed. Routine. Forgettable. Until the human walked up. He didn't look like much. Soft-skinned. No claws, no scales or armor plates. Just a boy in a plain uniform, walking with his hands in his pockets as though he didn't notice the stairs. The laughter started before he reached the arch. "Where are your fangs, prey creature?" One cadet jeered. "Did someone bring their pet along?" Another called. A third tossed him a charm of protection, smirking. "You'll need this, Earthling." The human didn't answer. He simply stepped into the scanner. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the arch flared red. Sirens hummed low and cold. "Warning. Origin Earth. Handle with caution." The laughter stopped. The crowd froze, every eye fixed on the glowing words. One cadet swallowed hard. "Earth?" The boy looked over his shoulder at them, calm as ever. "Yeah. Problem?" And just like that, the joke wasn't funny anymore. A moment later, a security officer was rushing down from the observation deck, her expression tight. Her name badge read, Lieutenant Sarin. She shoved past two stunned cadets, eyes locked on the boy still standing under the arch. "Name. Name." "Eli Walker," he said, enrolled under Sol Command Treaty Exchange. She stared at the scanner, then at him, then tapped her comm. "Confirm Earthborn cadet clearance for Walker, Eli. Serial 713 Sierra Kilo." Static. Then, confirmed. Status Earthborn. Active treaty registrant. Clearance, valid. The silence was thick. Sarin exhaled. "Proceed." Eli stepped forward, calm as ever, and the scanner let him pass. The red warning didn't vanish until he was 5 paces clear. A few cadets parted as he walked by. No one spoke. Only once he was out of earshot did someone finally whisper, "I thought Earth was just a myth." "No," another replied. "It's worse. It's real." The groups reassembled in silence, the usual boasting gone. No one mentioned homeworld advantages or elite bloodlines. Not now. Not after the scanner had called him something the galaxy didn't say lightly. Handle with caution. The orientation hall was colder than it needed to be, but that didn't stop the tension from sticking to every surface like condensation. Instructors lined the walls. The briefing began. Commander Tillex, a veteran from the Alcan campaign, stood center stage. Her voice was a practice drone. "You have been accepted to the Interstellar Peace and Defense Academy. Each of you represents a species with unique capabilities. You will be tested, broken, rebuilt." Eyes flicked to Eli. She didn't say his name, didn't need to. Not after the gate. "Among you are strength climbers from Haru's Fifth, neural tacticians from the Sharex Fold, sub-atmosphere specialists from Ios Delta. You will learn from each other, or you will fail." A low murmur rose. Everyone knew who the speech was really about now. The instructors didn't look at Eli, not directly, but no one seemed surprised that his presence had already triggered protocol exceptions. By the time dorm assignments were announced, 3 cadets had requested transfers from Eli's unit. 2 were approved. In the mess hall that night, a tray of food was left on the table across from him. No one claimed it. He ate quietly, not looking up. When he left, the tension followed him like static electricity. The next morning, the mocking resumed quieter now, more whispered than shouted. But it was still there. A Centauri cadet hissed to her companion, "He's just a skinny mammal. That scanner probably malfunctioned. He looks like he'd snap in half if the gravity fluxed. I bet Earth's not even that bad. It's all just council propaganda." Eli passed them without reacting. He was getting used to the stares, the muttering, the flinch some cadets did when he stepped too close, the way instructors watched him longer than necessary. That afternoon, he was called for a preliminary evaluation. Instructor Mora, a tall insectoid from the Careen species, tapped her stylus as she looked him over. "Why are you here?" "Enlistment treaty. Earth's part of the coalition now. We get to send 2 cadets per cycle." "You volunteered?" Eli nodded. She stared. You do understand your planet's designation, yes? Yeah. Then, you also understand that statistically, the average cadet from Earth doesn't survive 6 months of integrated training. He tilted his head. We survive worse than this by age 12. Mora blinked. Eli didn't elaborate. She cleared her throat and made a note. Fine, we'll see how you do in your first exposure module. Exposure to what? She smiled without humor. Environmental hazard simulation. Standard for all non-terrestrial cadets. He nodded. When? Now. The arena they brought him to wasn't empty. 15 other cadets were already waiting, each in protective gear calibrated to their species. A short-range atmospheric dome hovered above them, flickering with soft blue containment fields. Hazards would be randomized. Chemical, gravitational, biological, all simulated, but close enough to harm if taken lightly. Eli walked in, wearing only his uniform. The others stared. One of them, a crimson-skinned Draex, scoffed. Where's your gear? Didn't bring any. The Draex laughed. Then we get to watch you fail in real time. Eli cracked his neck once. You talk a lot for someone about to need rehydration packs. The Draex growled. Mora appeared in the upper control deck. Cadets, welcome to Integration Trial 1. This is a non-lethal simulation, but do not mistake that for safety. The dome will cycle through 3 hazards. Survive each for 5 minutes. Exit early, and your trial is logged as incomplete. A chime sounded. Begin. The field shifted. Gravity spiked. Several cadets grunted as their joints compressed. One collapsed to a knee. A Satari groaned, claws scrabbling for balance. The Draex fell sideways. Eli exhaled through his nose and started walking. Just walking. His steps were heavy, but even. The second hazard came fast acidic mist rolling in from vents along the floor. Protective suits sealed, filters activated. Eli's uniform hissed slightly where the mist touched the sleeves. He flinched, but only once. Checked his forearm. A mild burn. He flexed his fingers and kept going. The Draex tried to stand again, slipped. His helmet cracked. Alarm blared. Mora flagged extraction. A retrieval drone swooped down and pulled him out. Eli watched him go, then said quietly, Told you. The third hazard emerged with a growl-simulated predator drones, sleek, canine, fanged. 2 cadets screamed, one ran for the dome edge, another tried to fight. A third tripped and landed hard, shoulder dislocating with a pop that everyone heard. Eli grabbed him. Slung the alien's good arm around his shoulder, keeping low, head down, breath steady. The predators circled, analyzing movement. Eli stared one down and said, deadpan. We used to have pit bulls in my neighborhood. The drone paused. Then backed away. When the timer ended, only 6 cadets were still standing. Eli was one of them. His arm was burned. His leg had taken a hit from shrapnel. His breathing was shallow from unfiltered air. But he was still on his feet. Mora's voice echoed through the arena. Medical retrieval dispatched. Stand by for evac. One cadet looked at Eli, wide-eyed. You're bleeding. Why didn't you exit? He blinked once. Because it wasn't over yet. And no one laughed. Not this time. 2 days after the trial, Eli's name was known in every wing of the academy. Not officially, of course. No commendations had been issued. No records were publicly updated. But in the mess halls and barracks, the story moved faster than a comms ping. They said he didn't flinch under acid mist, that he stared down a predator drone like it was a lost puppy, that he helped an injured cadet while injured himself and still didn't request early exit. They also said he was bleeding and didn't care. Eli, for his part, didn't acknowledge the rumors. He limped through morning PT, his leg wrapped and his arm wrapped tighter. His uniform had been repaired but still carried faint acid stains at the seams. He ate quietly, ran drills with the same blank focus, and answered questions only when asked. But that didn't stop the whispers. Some cadets feared him now, not overtly, but enough to change their posture when he walked past. Others grew obsessed. They wanted to know what Earth really was. If the stories were true. Myrat, a spindly Ekari cadet with glimmering eye sacs, turned his curiosity into a spreadsheet. "So, you're telling me," he said during break, sitting opposite Eli in the courtyard, "your species evolved without exoskeletal protection, venom glands, or regenerative tissue?" "That's right," Eli said, not looking up from his hydration pack. "And you have a planetary mortality rate this high?" Eli sipped, then nodded. "Depending on the year, yeah." Myrat tapped his tablet rapidly. "How did you survive long enough to develop space travel?" Eli leaned back. "Stubbornness, fire, antibiotics." Myrat blinked. "That's not a strategy, that's luck." "No," Eli said, meeting his eyes. "It's pain tolerance and an unreasonable belief that we can fix anything if we just keep throwing ourselves at the problem." He stood up and walked off, leaving Myrat mumbling into his spreadsheet. By the end of that cycle, someone started a betting pool. It began as a joke, how many simulations Eli would survive, then how long he'd last in a full mixed-species trial. Then, quietly, whether he'd outlast cadets from species designed to survive conditions that would kill a human in minutes. The pool was technically against regs. No money changed hands, just favors, duty swaps, canteen priority, dorm upgrades. Still, everyone knew. The odds fluctuated. At first, most bets were against him. But not all. Raya, a cadet from the insectoid Kasari hive broods, wagered 5 hydration credits that he'd survive his next trial without armor. "He doesn't need protection," she said simply. "He is the protection." The phrase caught on. Eli's second test came sooner than expected. It was scheduled as part of Standardized Exposure Drill 3, a group rotation meant to test adaptability under complex environmental cycles. But this time, it was designed by instructor Vorim, a Xanthari known for brutal hazard blends. He had reviewed Eli's last performance and adjusted accordingly. The simulation would mimic multiple disaster conditions: erratic gravity fields, biochemical exposure, and predator-level threat detection. The cadets were issued light suits with auto-injectors and air filters. Eli was handed a pack with basic gauze, electrolyte tabs, and a single inhaler. He unzipped it, looked at the contents, then zipped it shut and nodded. "Fair enough." Commander Tilex addressed the group. "This is not a race. Survival is the metric. Do what you must to endure. Extraction protocols will be honored if initiated, but scorecards will reflect early withdrawal." The simulation began. The dome shimmered. Terrain cracked open into jagged shale. Gravity surged and dropped at random. Wind howled with chemical mist. Creatures roamed the fog, sniffing, programmed to hunt anything unmasked. Within 5 minutes, a cadet triggered an extraction beacon. The air had compromised her seal. Another went down hard, ankle twisted on unstable rock. Eli passed him without comment, then stopped, doubled back, and hauled him upright with one arm. "You have 3 good limbs," Eli said. "Use them." They hobbled together until a drone pulled the injured cadet out. That left 8. At the 10-minute mark, a Kasari screamed as a heat vent exploded beside her. The flare singed her upper shoulder and part of her neck plate. She dropped, writhing, her armor scorched. Eli was the first to reach her. "Don't move," he said, kneeling beside her. "You're shocky." He opened his pack, tore open gauze, and pressed it gently against the burn. She flinched. "Yeah," he muttered, "that's how it works." She blinked, dazed. "Why help me?" "You're still breathing." He gave her the inhaler. "Use it slow." By the time she was stable, 4 others had been removed from the sim. 2 more were hiding in the wrecked terrain, refusing to move. Only Eli stayed visible, active. He staggered once when the mist thickened, coughing so hard he dropped to a knee, but he forced a breath through clenched teeth and pushed upright again. Vorim increased the toxicity. Eli's skin flushed red, his eyes watered, but his vitals remained just above critical. Tilex muttered from the control booth. "That's not endurance, that's something else." Vorim didn't answer. The final hazard emerged, a simulated storm, with rotating wind columns and lightning discharges mapped to threat motion. Cadets scattered, scrambling for cover under broken walls. Eli walked into the open. Lightning cracked a few meters away. The thunder hit second. He didn't flinch. He raised his hands to the sky like he was measuring the air itself. Rain pelted him, his uniform soaked through instantly. His lips were split from dehydration, but he smiled faintly. "We call this weather," he said to no one. When the simulation finally ended, the field reset. The arena fell silent. Eli was still standing. The medbay visit was mandatory. Dr. Harrow looked him over with practiced precision. Burn exposure on his forearms, moderate lung inflammation, a stress fracture in his left foot from the shifting terrain. She frowned at the scan. "This is a 4-week healing window, minimum." "I can walk on it," Eli said. "You shouldn't." "I'll wrap it." Harrow leaned in. "Why didn't you exit the simulation?" He met her eyes. "Because it wasn't killing me." "And that's the threshold?" He paused. "Isn't it?" She didn't reply, just handed him a walking brace and a prescription for anti-inflammatories. He left before she finished filling in the chart. Back in the dorm, 2 cadets stood aside as he entered. One of them, a Noxari with bioluminescent arms, offered a bottle of cold electrolytes. "Here," he said. "Sorry about the charm thing." Eli took it, nodded. "Thanks." He sat down, unwrapped his leg, and started applying the brace. Outside, someone updated the betting pool board. The new title read, "Walker, Eli odds, undefined. Status, do not wager without medical insurance." The Academy's medical director filed an incident report the next morning. She labeled it, "Category Red Flag, Deliberate Exposure Endurance by Human Cadet." Copies were sent to both the Interstellar Medical Oversight Bureau and the Council Office of Planetary Risk Analysis. Attached was a note. Subject shows signs of persistent injury concealment and willful disregard for pain thresholds. Recommendation: immediate psychological evaluation. Secondary note: Earthborne pain response may differ significantly from baseline species. No one contacted Eli about it. But the instructors started watching him more closely. In the following days, Eli's routine didn't change. He limped through training, adjusted his run to accommodate the stress brace, and modified his push-ups to avoid using his left arm. When Instructor Kellen asked why he hadn't requested light-duty status, Eli simply replied, "Because I'm not finished learning." Inly, Kellen, a hardened Alari who had once taught vacuum survival to infantry troops, didn't press. But later that day, she pulled up every medical file Earth had ever sent to the Academy. She didn't speak for a long time after. Eli's notoriety spread faster than most would have predicted. Not because of PR, not because of gossip, because cadets began to adjust their standards around him without realizing they were doing it. When drills ran long, no one wanted to quit first if Eli was still moving. When cold exposure training triggered withdrawal in 3 cadets, Eli walked until he couldn't feel his hands, then warmed them on the side of a ventilation panel and kept going. It wasn't about winning. He never boasted. He rarely even spoke. But he kept showing up, injured, under-rested, tired in a way that settled deep in his bones. Still, he showed up. And it broke something in the cadets around him, not in a cruel way, in a reflective one, as if their own limits weren't where they thought they were. One morning, during a group simulation on subterranean navigation, the power flickered, just briefly, a pulse through the auxiliary dampeners. The lights dimmed, the atmospheric settings glitched, and for 13 seconds, the hazard monitoring went blind. When the lights returned, they found Eli on his knees in a crevice, dragging a collapsed cadet up by his vest. The cadet, Gerald from the methane-breathing Narthak, had lost respirator flow. His suit had failed in the darkness. No one else had seen. Eli had. He'd held his breath, climbed into the crevice, and pulled Gerald out manually. By the time medics arrived, Eli's O2 saturation had dropped to 77%. He spent that night in the medical wing again. Oxygen mask. Mild bronchospasm. Nasal mucosa burned from a trace leak of methane. Full recovery estimated in 5 to 6 days. He was cleared for light duty the next morning. He ignored it. Dr. Harrow caught him mid-march in the courtyard. "You need to stop," she said bluntly. "Your recovery is being compromised." Eli slowed, but didn't stop. He'd have died. "That's not the issue. Your next injury could—" "I don't care," he said. The words weren't angry. Just flat. Honest. I know pain. I know what too much feels like. I've felt worse. She stared at him. You're 19. On Earth, he said. That's enough to have seen things you don't talk about. Ever read about the 2038 wildfires? Or the dengue outbreak in Rio? Or the Seattle quake? She didn't answer. I have. He stepped around her and kept walking. She didn't follow. The next day, Commander Tillex called him into her office. Not a disciplinary meeting, something quieter, more formal. He sat across from her desk, hands resting in his lap. You've become something of a symbol, she said. I didn't ask for that. No, but it happened anyway. She tapped her screen, pulling up a list of cadets. This academy has trained over 2,000 species. We've learned how to accommodate venom resistance, exoskeletal mobility, even full-body regeneration. But we've never had to rewrite psychological protocols. Eli didn't move. Until now. She turned the screen so he could see. It displayed a new tag. Human Earthborn, Extreme Resilience Marker, Psychological Monitoring Advised. He stared at it. So I'm dangerous. Tillex raised a brow. You were always dangerous. The scanner knew that before you opened your mouth, but that's not the part I care about. She leaned forward. What I care about is this. Why do you keep pushing? You've proven yourself a dozen times over. You could coast through the rest of training. You don't. He thought for a moment, then said, Because this isn't the worst I've been through. You're not in danger here. That's the trick, he said quietly. Back home, danger doesn't look like this. It's subtle. It's a fever in a town with no doctors. It's a missed vaccine shipment. It's an aunt who dies in a flood because her apartment was on the ground floor. So no, I don't stop here. I don't stop until I know I can't go anymore. She didn't speak for a while. Then, if we promoted you early, would you accept? No. Why not? Why not? Because the people I'll command someday deserve someone who didn't quit halfway through. She shut the file. You can go. As he left, she added one thing. Eli. He paused. I'm glad you came. He nodded once. Me too. That night, the betting pool board was quietly taken down. No one said why, no one needed to. Because by now, it wasn't about wagers anymore. It was about respect. It started as a drill. A scheduled safety test of the Academy's emergency response systems. A formality announced weeks in advance. Non-combat. Simulated only. That was the idea. Until a power relay under Dorm Sector 3 ruptured. An overheated capacitor, faulty grounding. Then flame, real flame not simulated, not contained. Just a spark into plastic conduit and thermal padding, and suddenly fire licked the walls of a habitat wing built for species with no native fire exposure. Panic was immediate. Alarms screamed, containment shutters jammed, smoke filled the corridor before the suppression systems could catch up. Cadets stumbled, half-dressed, fleeing into the halls. One slipped, cracking a rib on the bulkhead. Two more were cornered in a maintenance closet as flames chewed through the ceiling. And Eli ran toward it. No one told him to, no one asked. He was on his way back from simulation review when the first siren went off. He didn't hesitate, just turned around and sprinted not from instinct, but from experience. Smoke didn't confuse him. Neither did the heat. Earth had taught him what burning buildings smelled like. By the time he reached the breached corridor, the fire suppression system had activated late but functional. Steam hissed, lights strobed. But the hallway was still full of heat, and more importantly, still full of cadets. Anyone in here? He shouted into the smoke. No answer. Then a cough. He dropped low, followed the sound. Found two cadets, one crumpled against the wall, dazed, breathing shallow, the other clutching her ankle, unable to stand. Neither wore rebreathers. He handed the injured one his uniform sleeve to bite down on, then lifted her without waiting. A third cadet Asathari tried to help, then doubled over coughing. Eli grabbed him by the collar too. Move or get moved. They got out. It didn't end there. Because the medics were spread thin, because a second flare-up breached the opposite wing, because one of the instructors had passed out from inhalation before managing to override the lock. Eli broke the override panel manually, slamming a conduit rod through it until the sparks cut the lock. His fingers were raw and blistered. He pulled the door open and found the instructor unconscious against the far wall, skin gray-green from oxygen deprivation. It took 10 minutes to drag her to the extraction point. He collapsed outside the threshold. Infirmary. Again. The burns weren't deep, second degree at worst, scattered across his hands and forearms. The worst was the smoke. Dr. Harrow sat beside his cot, watching the slow rhythm of the oxygen monitor. "You breathed carbonized plastic," she said. "Smelled worse than the smog back home. You tore muscle fibers lifting that cadet. She weighed almost twice your body mass." Eli didn't answer. "You should have blacked out, eh?" He shrugged. "You need real recovery time this time," she added. "At least 3 days of zero exertion. I'll put the order in myself." Still no answer. She reached over and lowered the oxygen flow. "You can't save everyone, Eli." "I know," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "But when the fire comes, someone has to run toward it." The Academy conducted a formal review the next day. Instructor Lutar chaired the panel. Damage reports were filed. Cadets interviewed. The malfunction traced to a manufacturing defect in the relay coils. Unpreventable. But what mattered most? The number of cadets pulled from the affected zones. 9 total. 5 had been too disoriented to evacuate alone. Eli's name was attached to all 5. The official commendation came through 2 days later. For acts of selfless service under fire conditions. For execution of extraction without formal command. For protecting life at personal risk. Cadet Eli Walker is hereby awarded the Council Medal of First Response. The medal was small, silver, with a jagged flame symbol etched into one side. It was presented quietly, in a short assembly, with only instructors present. Eli wore it for a day, then tucked it into his footlocker and didn't mention it again. By the following week, something changed in the dorms. The joke stopped entirely. The stares became greetings. The cadets who used to flinch when he passed now gave nods, subtle but real. Even the Satari cadet who once offered him a charm of protection gave him a quiet respect during mealtime and meant it. No one asked him to tell stories. They'd seen enough. But the real change came during a team navigation trial. The simulation was underground, dark, uneven terrain, narrow tunnels. Teams of 4 were assigned. Each team had to reach a distant beacon with full survival packs. Eli's team wasn't random. 3 cadets requested him. They didn't say why. They didn't need to. The trial began under false darkness, the walls pulsing with simulated seismic activity. One cadet slipped an ankle twist 20 minutes in. Eli knelt beside him, checked the ligaments with practiced fingers, and wrapped it with a tension brace. "Can you walk?" The cadet nodded. "Then let's move." They made the beacon in under time. When the instructor recorded their stats, he made one comment. "You're not leading, but everyone follows you." Eli shrugged. "That's how it works back home." Later, back in the dorm, someone updated the wall display that used to hold the betting pool. It now read, "Earthborn, Eli Walker. Species, human. Origin, Earth, handle with caution. Status, trusted." Graduation wasn't for another 6 months, but something shifted the day after the fire trial. The Academy no longer looked at Eli Walker as a curiosity, or a threat, or a problem to be managed. He had become something else entirely, a point of reference. When instructors needed an example of initiative under pressure, they named him. When cadets debated how far a person could push their limits, they used his name in the equations. He was no longer the Earthborn. He was just Eli now. That name carried weight. But not every cadet accepted it. One, in particular, Cadet Brask, a heavy-framed Tharn with 6 vestigial claws and a jaw that clicked when he was nervous, didn't hide his skepticism. He'd seen too many stories twist into myths and myths into nonsense. "I don't care what the scanner said," Brask muttered one evening, loud enough for most of the dorm to hear. "One kid from a nightmare planet doesn't make him a god." No one argued. No one defended. Eli, sitting on the edge of his cot, just looked up and said, "Good, because I'm not." Brask snorted. "Then how do you explain the way everyone moves when you speak, or how they stopped betting on you?" Eli folded his hands. "Because pain makes us listen." Brask stepped closer, looming. "So what? You enjoy suffering?" "No." "Then what are you proving?" Eli's voice didn't rise. "That pain isn't the end." That stopped Brask. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was simple, obvious, and completely alien. Eli added, quieter now, "Most of you trained to avoid it. We trained because we knew it was coming." He stood, no threat in his stance. Just presence. "Back home, we don't get the option to live without pain. So we learned how to carry it, work through it, move anyway." Brask stared, unsure if it was pity he felt or fear. Neither fit the moment. He left without another word. A week later, Eli received an unusual invitation. The Academy Council had convened a closed session, rare for cadets to be summoned, unheard of. To summon a first year, he arrived at the chamber, dressed in his standard uniform. He refused to wear medals. Inside were 6 beings, one from each of the major signatory species. Behind them, a glowing orb displayed planetary classifications. Earth blinked near the top, still red. "Cadet Walker," the lead counselor said, "you've disrupted expectations." "I noticed," he replied. The Kroshek delegate, armor gleaming under the dome lights, leaned forward. "You've survived 12 major drills, 4 emergency conditions, and 1 real-world disaster. With injuries, without withdrawal, and no performance degradation." Eli didn't respond. "Do all humans possess this disregard for limitation?" "No," he said, "but more than you'd expect." The Valak delegate, a cerebral strategist species, chimed in. "Explain the contradiction. Your bodies are objectively fragile. You're slower than most, heal slower than all, and possess no natural weapons. And yet you consistently outperform projections." Eli scratched the side of his neck. "We're not stronger," he said. "We just don't stop." "Clarify." "And, you calculate around pain," he said. "We build around it. Expect it. Train into it, not because we like it, but because it's the cost of surviving where we come from." The council murmured quietly. "You mean Earth." "I mean life," Eli corrected. "Earth just didn't hide the price." There was a long silence. Finally, the Kroshek leaned back and said, "We have debated revising Earth's classification. There is a proposal to reassign it not as uninhabitable, but as primordial training world." Eli lifted an eyebrow. "That sounds fancy and dumb." Somewhere behind the delegates, someone snorted. The lead counselor cleared her throat. "Would you prefer it remain labeled a death world?" "No," Eli said, "but call it Wooded Island, not a place to fear. A place that taught us how to survive the rest of the galaxy." The delegates conferred. Quiet nods passed between them. "We'll update the designation accordingly," the counselor said. Eli turned to leave. "One last thing," the Valak said. "What does make your kind dangerous, if not biology?" Eli looked over his shoulder. "We remember what hurt us, and we don't let it win." By the time final semester training began, Earth was no longer a myth. New cadets arrived each cycle. Some stared at the scanner near the gate, half hoping it would light red again. It didn't. Eli had been the only Earthborn that year. But the stories had taken root. No longer jokes about soft skin or fragile bones. Now they asked other things. What did frostbite feel like? What was it like growing up with lightning storms and old buildings that creaked during quakes? Was it true you could drown in under 3 inches of water? Eli answered when he felt like it. More often, he didn't, because he knew that the real lesson hadn't sunk in yet. It wasn't about storms or scars or even fire. It was about showing up again the next morning when your hands still shook. It was about carrying pain without making it someone else's problem. It was about letting the fear sit in your gut and still moving anyway. That was the Earthborn way. And when the next cadet passed through the gate, a tall girl with dark eyes and a patched jacket, her scanner lighting red, Eli didn't flinch. The gate said it again. Warning. Origin. Earth. Handle with caution. This time, no one laughed. She looked toward the crowd, saw him standing at the far end, arms folded, nodding once. And just like that, she wasn't alone. The scanner quieted. The gate opened. And the legend continued not with fire or blood or war, but with the quiet strength of a species that refused to quit.